This podcast is made possible by the generosity of listeners and viewers like you. Kindly consider a contribution through Patreon or PayPal. Links are in the details box. Any amount is appreciated. And follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The handle, the Beirut Banyan. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And to stay updated with video releases, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for listening, and thanks for watching. I'm Rani Shatar, and this is the Beirut Banyan. I think I look like a tomato.
Man is sweating.
I am sweating. I changed my clothes twice today, and I only started sweating about 2 hours ago. I took the shot yesterday.
So the fever is kicking in mid-episode.
أخذت 2 Panadol. I am sweating, but I know I'm in good company. I know I'm going to love this episode. So if I doze off a bit, it's got nothing to do with you. It's Corona booster, Pfizer booster.
You don't want to boost the corona.
I don't want to boost the corona. And honestly, I think I waited a bit too long to get the booster shot. I could have taken it 3 months ago. I extended it. So maybe it's not the best idea to do it midsummer when it's hot already, because my temperature is high.
It's just today. Tomorrow it'll go.
Yeah. At first I thought I was sweating because you were coming over. And it had nothing to do with that.
Superstar.
Yes. The second thing I want to mention is that about 4 years ago, I started recording episodes before I released them. And this is going back to 2018 when the protests were not part of our daily lexicon. Politics was obviously discussed, but not in the way that it's been discussed.
Just in the back of our minds.
Yeah. And really, since October 17, the landscape changed, I think, permanently. But in those days, I used to do storytelling episodes. Had little to do with politics, more to do with Beirut. And the way I imagined Beirut. And the way I thought other people imagined it too, sometimes differently. And when I say imagine, I think it means mostly film, photography, literature, any storytelling venue that gives me goosebumps. And the first episode I released, almost 3 years ago until today, was with Ziad Dwaidi. It was about West Beirut and this man's recollections and his own maybe reflections and re-embrace of a part of Beirut that he left during the Civil War and returned to after the war ended. For me, it remains my favorite movie. And I think that is, in the background, why I do this podcast, why I started doing a history tour of Beirut called Walk Beirut almost 15 years ago. It was a tribute to storytellers. Yeah, I'm 41.
By the way, on the issue of age,
yes.
We said that I'm 23.
Well, I hope you... that is your age, right? Yeah.
I wanted to ask, has there ever been a younger speaker?
Ghia Al-Assad and Jana Masoud from Mintashri.
Oh, yeah, Jana, yeah.
And Verena Al-Amil is 23. I don't know if you're...
Borderline now.
Yeah. I think they are both 23 from Mintashri. Or 22, maybe 23. Well, I'd have to check.
I think they're younger. April.
So you just turned 23.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll check in with
also, not to disappoint you,
yes,
but
sir.
I haven't watched West Beirut yet. Not to disappoint the 300,000.
Wait, you haven't?
No, I haven't watched it yet.
Okay, so you're going to have to watch it after this episode.
Definitely.
Because I think you have an eye for Hamra, the way Ziad Dwaidi once did. And it was a tribute to other storytellers, in particular Samir Asir, who was a writer, journalist, historian, you know the man, politician, all of the above. So my passion is here. It's not in elections. It's not in...
It's just been a detour the past few years, basically.
I mean, it's
not a detour, more than a responsibility for all of us to be able to speak about politics and bring it actually into the foreground rather than the background, I think.
The reasons you left your chemical engineering career, or maybe you took a side journey. Maybe
I just graduated.
You just graduated, but let's say the reason you're not taking photos of chemists
The reason I'm not producing chemicals in factories at the moment.
Exactly, but that's better said. Is because I think you got the same bug that bit you.
Exactly.
During the protests, I'm guessing.
First night.
The first night is the same bug that bit me long ago. It may be a different protest. It's less to do with recent stuff. It's more to do with the protests in 2005, primarily March 14. And Samir Asir, of course, is part of that story. Anyway, so 15 years ago, or no, 2005 is 17 years ago, I was 24. So your age, and the bug bit me.
Wow.
So I think we're on the same path of storytelling.
Did you study anything other than what you're doing now?
Oh yeah, I studied psychology, literature. I did a master's at AUB in Middle East Studies. That's the closest.
So you've shifted career paths. You could have been a professor, for example. You could have went into academics.
That's being too kind to me. I don't think anyone would want to deal with me in a classroom. Maybe, I don't. No, but your lens, your eye, your observing lens, your camera lens. I'm glad you brought this camera. We're gonna talk about this camera. You're the kind of person I want to speak with as this anniversary approaches of me trying to do Beirut justice. So that's my way of saying thank you for coming on a Friday night. Let me start by you introducing yourself to someone who doesn't know you, because I just met you, but I feel comfortable with you. And it feels like I've known you already through social media, but somebody who has no idea who you are. A brief introduction on your terms.
Okay, here we go. So it's a bit, difficult to talk about yourself extensively, I think. So I'm Nabeel Yakzan. I grew up in the United Arab Emirates most of my years, and I moved here for university in 2017.
Okay.
So about 2 years before the protests started. And I guess if you want more of a background in terms of how I got into photography itself. So basically in high school, I was doing all the high school pictures. It was nothing really artistic. And, in Abu Dhabi, where I was living, especially, it's kind of bland. You could think of everything over there as, it's a monarchy, first of all. And there's such a focus on privacy and just control over every aspect, over everyone's lives in the United Arab Emirates as well. And so, once I moved here, everything became so much less corporate. And, the first walk I took through Beirut was, you could say, insanely eye-opening in terms of the fact that, in the Emirates, you don't really see much of everyday life. Everyone over there, if they're on a walk, they're on a walk for work. There's no on a walk for entertainment or, for fun. It's very corporate over there. So to be able to move to Lebanon and capture what I think the streets are, extremely more artistic because first of all, they're more worn down. So much history has passed them as compared to the Emirates as well. Because, these cities over there have been erected only in maybe like the last 20 years. And, here it's been, thousands? So, yeah.
So the long view of this city versus, and I like the way you describe the UAE, mundane. And you brought up their form of governance, which I think is an appropriate way of describing the blandness.
Exactly.
I've never heard those two words together as a storyteller. So your passion for photography predates Beirut.
Yeah.
But in 2017, is that the first time you arrived to Beirut long term?
Yeah, exactly. That's when I came here and just never... When I arrived, actually, I felt like, how you live somewhere, then you go for a vacation. And since then, I've just arrived but never left. But I feel as though it's just been one long, extended vacation, as though I'm going to return someday. Right. It's a weird feeling.
But your eye for Hamra is, I think, particularly profound. You do street series on Twitter, which I think is a nice... I mean, for me, I'll say something which is a bit odd. I use Twitter for news, but I'm happier with Twitter when someone like you is on Twitter. Because it's less news per se, more just your eye. It could be protests at the central bank. You're taking photos of that. I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, it was yesterday.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not just photography for the sake of it. I think there's a political dimension there. But I prefer you on Twitter when I'm scrolling the news because I take a moment to appreciate what I'm not seeing. It's through your eye. But Hamra, I think, stands out in your photography. And I'm wondering, is that strictly to do with you at AUB? Is that a...
Mostly, yes.
Okay.
You know, like I lived on Bliss Street, first of all. First few years, I lived on Bliss Street, basically in front of the AB main gate.
Okay.
And, you know, it was just in terms of proximity, you know, first of all, I'd walk with my camera for hours. And usually in the first few years, I just... I wouldn't use taxis. If I wanted to go to Achrafieh, it would be through walking. And so, you know, I'd have to pass throughout all of Hamra to get there. So you could say, yeah, that's why the pictures were mostly based on Hamra Street.
And you said walking. So that's, I think, the only way you can discover Beirut.
True.
My tour was called Walk Beirut. And whenever anybody would ask, where's the bus? I would say, that's the first word. It's called Walk Beirut.
You know, especially since Beirut is such a small city, it's designed for walking. I'm
Absolutely.
very against cities built around cars, first of all, because like let's say America, basically, there is no walking. You know, there's just vast lands of parking lots, malls,
right. Yeah.
vast lands, malls. You know, so
similar to, in a way, to Dubai in that
exactly
lifestyle.
because of the heat for that example.
You know, but you're making a parallel to my memory of AUB, which I enjoy. I grew up at the end of Bliss Street.
Next to the Rose House.
Yeah, and actually just beneath the old lighthouse.
That's very nice.
I would only walk. And I actually refused to leave that little corner until the rent rates were so absurd I couldn't justify it. But I deliberately never had a car. I would take service when I needed to. Or I would just walk around Hamra and Ras Beirut. I didn't feel the need. And this is being a bit unfair to other parts of the city. I didn't feel the need to venture further. But this is going back many years ago. The reason I keep bringing this out is because I want you just to take a look. I mean, this is half of the tour that I started 17 years ago. The reason I say half is because I trimmed it over time. It was a 7-hour walking tour of Beirut. من أول شارع بليس لتقريبا برج حمود. So it was the whole
That's where I
journey.
usually stop as well.
Right. I eventually tried to narrow it down into an afternoon, a 4-hour storytelling tour. But I would start in Hamra. And I emphasized Hamra. Now, I'm curious about your way of experiencing Hamra the last 5-6 years since you've been here, since 2017. Hamra has changed for me, stretching it longer.
Huge change, yeah.
And I think the change is actually, it's accelerated. This is a sensitive word, I think, because I don't think there's any gentle way to fully describe the change in that neighborhood without it sounding a bit... It's not that it's... the descriptions, I think, are difficult, but they're real. And I can give you my own taste and see if it resonates with you. I don't know a Hamra that's pitch black at night.
So that's a huge issue I wanted to bring up, actually. I used to be able to do night photography in Hamra, and now it's essentially impossible. First of all, like some nights when I was walking back from university, I'd have to rely on the moonlight to be able to get, actually see the ground at some points throughout the streets.
So the darkness has impacted your own passion.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, for me, it's that there's no life at night, or the life that I experienced today.
It's concentrated. It's just been concentrated around bars, you know.
Exactly. So we know them: Mizyan, أول شارع حمراء, or تقريبا نص الشارع. We know Maqdisi, where those bars still linger. There's these odd clubs that open up Friday and Saturday, Metro, and that other one that stays open until 5 in the morning. I think it's Nasser or something. I forget the name. Maybe it's not Nasser. I think it is Nasser. I don't remember. But the nightlife is not spread out the way it once was.
Also because it's a safety issue at this point as well.
Exactly.
My friend just came from Abu Dhabi. He's gotten mugged twice.
In Hamra?
In Hamra, yeah.
Wow.
But it was late. Yeah, it's kind of his fault being outside maybe at 2 or 1 a.m., pitch black. Of course, it's going to be a safety issue as well.
What you're saying right now is unthinkable to me not that long ago. That 2 in the morning is dangerous in Hamra, but now that's a reality. Yeah,
I used to feel safe basically walking at those times. And now it's just completely different. Okay, so
AUB, let's say Bliss Street, Ras Beirut, Hamra is part of that. Could you maybe walk me through your own journey into Beirut once you arrive? Because naturally you're extending your territory. Just if you could maybe bring it to life. What direction you took, and was it simply just you're going to go into downtown? You're more interested in seeing the Corniche because you're very good at all of them.
Mm.
You don't really venture into Achrafieh much. I've noticed that. But maybe your geography and how you choose where to go from Hamra.
Yeah. So, first, I'd start off on Jeanne d'Arc Street, basically, and I'd walk up to Hamra Street. And, the first few years, I'd basically walk until I'd get lost. So, you keep doing it until you do it, then you stop getting lost. Then you have to get lost again. And so I think the first few years, I didn't really spend much on Hamra. Like you said, I spent down on Manara because as a photographer, I think it's a much more friendly environment down there. Because Manara is a weird place. Essentially, everyone is very open to, first of all, being talked to, being photographed. It's as if it's a scene with not many rules in terms of societal norms down in Manara. You have old shirtless men, everyone tanning. There's no formalities down there like you'd find, let's say, in a city street. And as I progressed down there as a photographer, I'd eventually feel more comfortable going into the inner city.
Is that because, and this is my speculation, that in Hamra, there's a lot, it's people-driven photography that I noticed, and I'm going to pull out a few of these photos now, that you do emphasize the person in Hamra, and naturally in Manara it's both. It's the individual, and of course it's the
scene,
the geography. Does that make it more comfortable that you're not intruding on people?
Yeah, it's the type of photography I mostly do is called the fisherman style. So first of all, you'd pose a nice scene and you'd wait for someone to walk through it. And so essentially, you're not really invading the privacy of the individual, but rather you're taking a picture of a scene and they walk into it. And then like the responsibility of, let's say, the ethics of street photography don't really bother you that much.
Right. Yeah.
It's a whole discussion, the ethics of street photography. We could get into it if you'd like.
I'd love to. Yeah, let's actually, let's start with Hamra and then we can walk into Manara. So this is one of the photos you sent to me, and I love this photo. I don't know if I'm right. Is this Sukrat or near Sukrat?
This is actually, I think, one street above Hamra. The farther you go above Hamra, I tend to think that the streets are very traditional. There's still shop owners who, they
above meaning south of Hamra, so towards LAU.
The street, exactly.
Okay, not towards Bliss.
La.
In the other direction. Okay.
Yeah. And so, what I'd like to talk about in this image specifically is that the type of photography I do circles around the working class, basically.
Yeah.
So if you look into history, every art form has had a focus in terms of what the art form portrays, basically, and the values they want to portray. And, if you look into let's say, the old art forms, painting, it would just be commissioned by the wealthy, basically, to preserve the values of the wealthy. You'd have portraits, the painting of Napoleon as well, pointing his finger. But, street photography itself allows you to, let's say, preserve the ongoings and everyday life of the working class, which is something I believe that hasn't been really covered much in history. So
you have that more classical viewpoint? You mentioned Napoleon.
Yeah, I'm saying that's essentially different because, you'd be taking pictures, let's say, of the working class in this case, but rather old art forms never really took into account the working class or preserving the ongoings of the working class.
I see. So you're deliberately focusing on
working class individuals.
Oh, I didn't. It wouldn't have crossed my mind. To me, this is just Hamra.
Yeah.
But it's that's a nice reminder that I don't always understand necessarily everything that's going on. So I've noticed also you branch into cars sometimes. You go into these
vintage cars.
Yeah. But the working class element, I didn't catch that. That's quite nice. I think actually that's the second photo as well. Or sorry, not that one. So you have a lot of typical, very minimalistic businesses that are street vendors or the like. Just if you could describe it, is it also a deliberate focus on this kind of profession? Yeah,
this is something else, essentially why I do photography is basically I want to be able to preserve the ways of life of specifically this generation of people. You'd have people tell me, Nabeel, all you do is take pictures of old people. And I have to admit, I do have a focus on old people. I think because old people have some relation to the passing of time, as well as they do open like street vendors. Their profession, is not being recreated anymore. Basically, everyone's going to university these days, getting a degree, working in something corporate, basically.
Right.
And so what you have is basically the disappearance of this type of let's say working condition.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And I'm going to just guess that you started taking these kinds of photos before October 17. It wasn't that...
Exactly.
This is not post...
Most of these photos that I've sent you are actually pre-revolution.
Right. Okay, there's another photo in this group here. Yeah, I love this photo. So, now that you explain them, I see it better. I didn't even think about the generational emphasis.
Yeah.
It's just the Hamra that I know. But now I see it in you're actually paying tribute to a difficult, maybe generations post-war experience.
Exactly.
Because I think, this kind of age group has seen it all.
Exactly. And this age group, you could say, are they're not being regenerated in terms of what they do, in terms of so let's say these people's kids, they're not going to be street vendors as well. They are because you have the disappearance of, let's say, old cultural and traditional bazaar forms of walking around and selling things, and just the beginning of popping up of just privatization and corporate shops in the background.
Right. And then of course, it's just that you just have to take a quick glance, and you know that this is a very unique Lebanese kind of
this guy walks around Hamra Street, says baladi baladi,
and he has honey,
he's selling
and
honey,
you're able to get these photos, and I always notice they don't notice you. Are you waiting at the right time, or are you just catching them right before they make eye contact?
This one was taken also with the fisherman technique. I'd pose the scene, I noticed the scene, and essentially I just get lucky basically with the subject as aesthetic as this guy to pass through the scene. But
what is the fisherman technique exactly?
So I'd notice like composition first. You notice a nice frame. You'd set up the camera. I just hold the camera like this until someone walks through.
Oh, so you're positioned there.
Yeah.
And they don't notice you kind of just...
I've been standing there for a while. They're not going to really look at the camera.
An odd question. Do you ever get hassled? Because I know in Beirut it's not easy to just take a camera and take photos, and people do come up and they ask what you're doing, and is it difficult to just stand in Hamra with the camera waiting?
Well, most of my friends who do photography have had those experiences of being basically meeting someone aggressive.
Right. Not necessarily security or anything like that. Just could be anybody.
Yeah. But not really with me, because I tend to I walk around for hours looking for subjects who look approachable. Basically, if I see someone looks kind of grumpy, he could start a problem, I don't really lift the camera towards them. Even though it is quite disappointing to be able to miss a scene that looked really nice, but there is this issue of the anxiety of having to point a camera at a stranger, which pushes me to miss. I can't tell, from all the work that I've had, I can't tell you how many missed opportunities there have been. So you're probably in the thousands.
Oh, really? But you're sensitive to those moments and you say no.
Yeah, exactly. I have a lot of anxiety about pointing a camera at strangers. First of all, it's not something I thought in my first years of doing photography that I'd probably get used to it. Khalas, 3 years into doing photography, I can just point the camera. But even these days, it's really hard to invade someone's privacy basically as they're walking and take a picture of them.
But I'm glad that you're honest about that. So you're missing out on those opportunities, but you feel that it's almost like a principle in that sense. You don't want to take advantage of someone's space. I respect that. There's another photo that you took, which for me is priceless. I did not know that payphones are still working.
This was pre-revolution.
But even
they're probably destroyed by now.
But even pre-October 17, I didn't know.
They do. And actually, I thought someone recently actually using them, so they still do work even today.
They still work.
Yeah. And so it goes back to the issue of preserving the people that use payphones and preserving the images of them, basically, as history goes by and payphones disappear from public spaces. And so photography, in a way, acts as a way to preserve this lifestyle.
Even I think it was a piece in the New York Times about the last payphone in New York
Ah,
being removed.
wow.
It's the final payphone, which still had those coin slots. And this is actually capturing a bit of history.
Yeah, it is quite historical. And this image is quite, it means a lot to me because I took this, I think, in the week of next to October 17, 2019. So this, you could say, actually, this was the last image I took in terms of street photography before the revolution started.
Oh, wow.
And so in my mind, there was this transition between my styles before and after this image specifically. Yeah.
Before we get into downtown and before we get into Manara and downtown, tell me why you don't enjoy Canon photography.
So I'm what's known as a Canon hater.
You should say it right to the Canon camera. Canon hater.
So he uses Canons.
Yes, sir.
Maybe it's, I think it's kind of jealousy maybe because I started off with a Nikon and actually most of my photography was shot with a Nikon. All the images you've seen have been shot with a Nikon, the 850 specifically.
Which is this camera?
No, that's a Fujifilm.
Oh, okay.
You'll notice a huge change of my style after this camera because first of all, I'm now using a wider lens and first of all, it can't even handle much nighttime photography as well, so you won't be seeing much nighttime photography being output by me anymore.
I see. And sorry, the Icon camera was the one that was used in Hamra mostly?
Yeah,
okay.
Nikon, yeah.
So could you then, in that case, since you're a Canon hater, could you maybe explain what this camera is and why you have this one with you as opposed to any other brand? Why is Fujifilm on the table?
The Nikon was huge. The Nikon was just purely a photojournalism camera. It was an enormous black rock.
I know these cameras.
Pulling my neck down.
Right.
When it came to street photography, you'd feel... So this camera makes me look like a tourist. It's easier for me to lift it and take a picture of the city. But, when you're lifting the Nikon D850 at someone, they think they're going to be in a news article. They're going to be written about. And
right. So
the
it's
Nikon,
intimidating.
Yeah, it wasn't friendly at all. So first of all that, and then the weight issue. I'm walking around for hours, and like I said before we even started recording, I'm getting a hunchback.
Right. Oh, so that's from carrying that Nikon. But what is the advantage to the Nikon as opposed to the Fujifilm? What is the...
higher resolution, higher ISO, more dynamic range, a lot of things. There's been a huge drop in terms of the quality of the images. So this camera outputs images at 15 megabytes per image, but the other camera used to output images at 30 megabytes.
I see.
So you could basically essentially zoom in as much as you wanted before things got pixelated.
So almost double the resolution. I mean, the quality is superior.
Yeah.
But you're able to get what you want.
There had to be a compromise somewhere, a smaller camera, more friendly. And plus, it looks nice. It looks like a film camera, you'll notice.
Beyond weight, though, is there any advantage to this camera?
Let me think.
Or is the Nikon still...
there is a huge advantage is that Nikon... the colors of it outputs the pictures, I felt as though they were too close to real life. That might sound like an advantage, but I wanted a camera where I was able to do some editing in camera as well. This camera you can edit in camera, as well as the fact that this camera also has...
So you can edit in camera? You couldn't do that in the Nikon?
Not much. As well, this camera has some presets. I can essentially apply the effects I wanted before taking the picture as well. So this camera has more of a creative range rather than the Nikon's routine, close to real life images, basically.
But why do you hate Canon? Because the way you described your Fujifilm camera is very similar.
The main reason is that Nikon had an extremely bad video system. And so Canon has an extremely good video system. And so...
that's why we're here.
That's where the jealousy enters.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the video. That's it. Yeah. But otherwise, you don't think the Canon has that kind of...
No. I hate Canon purely for simply dumb reasons.
Oh, so you don't... Oh, I see. Now I understand. You just want a Canon camera. That's really... Oh, okay.
It's bittersweet.
Oh, well, you know what? Maybe we can trade. No, I appreciate these nuances because I actually never really understood why the Nikon was being used for photojournalism. But that makes sense. These are going out to major news
Nikon
outlets.
is a workhorse,
Yeah. Workhorse, that's well said. Let's go to Manara. So, my friend, I think of the photos that have less to do with politics and just Beirut as it stands, as it exists, I think you found a way to capture Ras Beirut, Corniche, and the above in a way that I think is quite haunting sometimes. This photo, the reason I like it,
It's Ramlat al-Baida.
100%.
I can't tell you what it smelled like when I was taking this photo.
So I'm glad you're saying this because I could smell it by just looking at the photo. That to me is the destruction of Beirut.
Yeah.
The loveliest coast turned into a sewage dump.
I mean, yeah, like you have Italy with a coast with the Mediterranean, and then you have the Mediterranean here. There's been studies by AUB about the bacteria in these waters reaching dangerous levels for human beings to be even swimming in.
Yeah.
Yet they're full of human beings swimming in them. So it poses a multitude of health issues, as well as I'm not sure if there's any airborne transmission.
But I can even see them, because that's not humidity.
There was a fog. There was a sort of fog.
Yeah, absolutely. So you found your way into Ramlat al-Baida and you found somebody swimming.
I love Ramlat al-Baida since it's basically like I said about Manara. Even though Ramlat al-Baida is a bit more private, it's weird being able to take pictures on a beach somewhere where it's especially more exploitative in terms of taking pictures of people on a beach. People don't expect to have their pictures taken somewhere like that. But like I said,
but this person wouldn't have even noticed you, I guess, because that seems like a very zoomed in photo.
Yeah, it was. Most of actually my photography was shot on a 50mm lens, so there's no zooming. It's just one fixed millimeter.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that one is haunting because that's the Manara, Ramlat al-Baida.
It's a very solitary photo, I'd imagine. There's just someone walking. What I like to do in photography is basically take pictures of these peculiar people. Especially I noticed during nighttime, the city is mostly empty. Not just for the safety reasons, but the fact that people don't like to, it seems, to walk anymore, especially through the city. And you'd rarely find any people like this, taking walks in places like these. And so that's what makes them essentially, I think, peculiar people.
Could I interrupt you with an odd question? Because you just took out your phone.
Yeah.
Have you ever, this is a stupid question, have you ever been tempted to take photography with that kind of camera? And just, have you ever chosen your phone's camera over the effort you're putting into these photos?
So the sensor size of the phone's camera is about a few centimeters large, basically, while the sensors you'd find on a larger camera, they'd allow you to take pictures in higher resolution. And so this relates to what I eventually want to do with my work. If I want to have my work in exhibitions, if I want to have my work in books, with the phone photography, you can't really expand the photos.
Right.
And you'd want to also be able to, in this day and age, take pictures which can be enjoyed larger than on a medium larger than a phone screen.
Sure.
So if I ever wanted to expand my photos larger than a phone screen, I'd have to opt for the camera.
But I didn't ask it the right way. There's sometimes I see you posting a collection of street series photos that are mostly on Twitter, the ones I see. They seem like they could have been taken by a phone camera.
Exactly, the scenes exist, but the lens of the phone camera, first of all, is extremely wide.
So those are not phone camera photos.
No.
Oh, I see.
Those are all with 50mm photos, so it's kind of zoomed in, and so even when you zoom in on a phone, you'll notice the quality drops intensely when you zoom in. Yeah.
So there's never a preference to the accessibility of your phone camera.
I mean, it's easier, but kaman, yeah, you're right. It is a lot of effort to lug around my camera everywhere, but I do that.
You do that? Oh, so cause that's what I was wondering, because a lot of these are natural moments, and I would guess you don't always have your camera.
I actually always do.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
okay.
Even friends gatherings, if you ask any of my friends, my camera's always with me.
I see.
Yeah.
So you're that guy.
Yeah, because especially with street photography, you never know what's going to pop up. That's what I like when I exit my building, is you never know what you're going to see on the specific day. Like I went down to Manara one day and I just saw a guy with his pet owls. He's holding his pet owls on his hand.
Yeah.
And so it's really weird, and I want to have my camera in those moments.
I see. So that is your pretty much with you, as the way your phone is with you. You're always I didn't know that. Let's go to the second photo, which is, I love this photo here.
Beirut in winter.
Yeah,
so
but I mean,
nice.
you really took advantage of
These people were
suffering.
going to die, by the way. They weren't on the stairs. They were where the wave was crashing before this photo.
Oh, so they were on their way.
And I yelled at them, get up, come back to the stairs. Yeah.
Was this around the time that there was a couple, maybe a couple, the guy died?
Someone fell into the water?
So someone got smashed by a wave several months ago. I think both were injured, and she survived. He didn't, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it's obviously it's dangerous to be down there.
Yeah.
But you caught them right at the right time.
Mm.
So may I ask, were you standing waiting? Were
No,
you waiting?
these moments you can't do the fisherman technique, or you have to go, spontaneously find the scenes. Basically, a famous photographer called Henry Cartier-Bresson, he said he invented basically the genre of street photography.
So what's
his
name?
Henry Cartier-Bresson. He, to him, it's being able to capture the decisive moment, basically, in street photography. So moments which you don't really see every day, basically. Especially with this photo, exactly like this photo was taken right after these people were going to die, basically, as we said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're using that technique, and you're not just waiting at the moment.
No, this one you can't. Well, with waves, essentially, I have other photos actually on the Manara walkway where I see that waves are crashing onto the walkway where people are walking. I'd actually wait there and wait for someone to not know the waves are hitting, and wait for the wave to hit them.
So you're just, what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
I'll send you the picture after.
Yeah, sure. But I really like this photo because I'll tell you why. It maybe I'm wrong. It feels like it's a father and maybe a son who are not really. It's not that they're suffering. They're not suffering in this photo. I mean, they're gonna get out. They're getting wet, obviously, because they made a bad decision by being down there. But it's a nice photo. It's like a bonding photo.
Exactly.
And the Mediterranean, even though it's a bit violent, it's not that violent.
Yeah.
To the point that they're not going to be swept away by it. Beirut feels like it's being cleaned as well. It's almost like a shower, desperately needed shower. Sorry,
what I always think about essentially is if we designed the wall to be that high, because I always think, when was this? Do you know when this wall was made?
I mean, I know the corniche is during the French Mandate.
Oh, okay.
I think the railing is not the original. No, the railing.
Because I always think, did we design this accounting for climate change? Because it seems really high compared to the water.
That's interesting. I doubt it.
Yeah.
I mean, it has survived, which is quite impressive. But anyway, you're very good at capturing those natural moments, even when somebody's getting showered. That photo, I couldn't figure out where that is.
As well, Ramlat al-Bayda.
That's Ramlat al-Bayda.
Even though this guy walks across the whole Manara with his horses. I've met up with him on multiple occasions. We've done photo shoots with this guy. Basically, we rented the horses. We've done photo shoots on the horses.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I think this horse is called Honey.
So he's strolling along the corniche with his horse.
Yeah, he's trying to find tourists.
I see. So self-employed. Yeah. So that's, I mean, the black and white technique here, and the way the Ramlat al-Bayda looks different. To me, it's actually quite nice because it has this wintry feel. It could even be like a cold European winter. And I think that's just because you found a way to expose it this way. But I wouldn't think Ramlat al-Bayda.
Yeah.
Unlike the haunting photo earlier. This looks like...
There is no trash in this photo because it was photoshopped.
Oh.
Yeah, there was trash before.
Okay.
I removed trash.
I'm glad you're saying this. Okay, so you actually, in this photo, you removed... the bottles or whatever.
There's so much microplastics on this shore now. Like if you go down there and you see the amount of, especially medical things, like medical cartridges, all scattered all over the,
So let me ask you then a personal question. I didn't know it's Ramlat al-Bayda for the reasons that you are just hinting at, which is you edited out.
Yeah.
Why did you remove the trash from this photo?
So when you're trying to find good composition for the shots, basically, you want to remove anything that removes attention from what you want to be the center of focus. I wanted this guy to be the center of focus. So there was some white plastic, and that, it's completely gray down here. So if there were to be any white gleaming pieces of plastic, it would disrupt, basically, it would make the photo chaotic, I think. So, yeah.
So it wasn't to disrupt him. It was more to...
keep the focus on him.
Keep the focus on him. I see.
Because I want him to be the center of focus.
Right.
Yeah, and you'll notice also, this is kind of off topic, but most of my photography are portraits. I don't know why specifically.
Yeah, well,
why
I
they avoid that.
mean, I have seen some photos where there's no one in the photo. Actually, you took.
No, I mean portraits, as in they're not landscape.
Oh, sorry. Okay, right. That's interesting. But you do have landscape photos. I've seen you post, but the majority.
With the new camera, most are landscapes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go to Roche.
Yeah,
I mean,
Roche.
I think I've seen that image in my mind hundreds of times, if not more. And probably the same guy fishing there all the time.
It was a really nice photo, yeah.
Yeah.
And no, I took this photo, I think, more for maybe commercial reasons. This simply because this photo sells well. You know, it is a nice image of Beirut as a souvenir. And
Right.
so, yeah.
People like pictures of Roche. Visitors love
the
photos.
Pigeon Rock.
The Pigeon Rock. But you know, I mean, you tell me if this is true. No one in Lebanon has a photo of Roche at home.
Yeah. But outside,
Outside, yeah. Restaurants, barra, they always put Roche.
it's a symbol.
Symbol. Nahna, we don't even notice it anymore.
Yeah.
But you know, I was going to ask you.
But before we move on, I'd like to mention, by the way, look at the flag, the Lebanese flag on top of the rock.
Yeah.
I want you to think about, like, this is a major, what's it called, tourist destination. But look at the beat down flag we have on top of it. You know, it's barely even swinging in the air.
That's true. But I was curious about Roche, the way you see it today on the Corniche, and the way Roche used to appear from Beirut. The skyline along Roche is new. This is post-war high-rise infrastructure, these residential towers. Do you think that Roche has been maybe it's not that it's forgotten, everyone knows where Roche is, but do you think it doesn't fit naturally anymore into the way we maybe drive around Beirut? We don't even notice Roche. On the Corniche, we're more focused on getting from one place to the other. You really have to walk to the edge, or you have to live in one of those towers that has blocked everyone's view.
Yeah, this is something I wanted to mention specifically because I was at an exhibition recently for old photos of Beirut, and they were talking about, you know, why have people lost connection with the shoreline? Why have people lost connection with the coast? And you could, you know, attribute that to the privatization of, you know, all the houses, specifically, like, so you have Beirut souks blocking everyone from being able to even own a home next to the shore. Or even, specifically, we were talking at the exhibition about why have people lost their connection to the port, because in old Lebanon the port used to be something that people would walk through, but now it's just shipping containers and, you know, being lifted and put onto ships. But
and we can't even go there even
exactly
if we
because
can't
people
walk
have essentially been priced out of the region. Rent prices, real estate. Yeah, you can blame everything on capitalism these days.
Let's go to I mean
photo.
This was the reason I liked it is because it's in a way, how do I say it? You're fine. There's a word for it and I don't know what it is. It's not that it's cliche, because that's not the right word, obviously.
There are lots of photos like this of a woman in a burqa, just, you know, solitary in the center of the focus. Yeah,
but I could tell that there's a I don't know.
So when I posted this photo, the caption I put was, we had swum in the ocean of religion for so long, we had never even gotten wet. So for me, this photo is a critique of religion, basically.
So that was deliberate.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, you know what? It's better to ask. I thought it was the opposite, meaning that you're sympathizing with her.
No.
See, okay, that's great.
Well, you have to sympathize with people, you know, who are religious. Basically, no one is religious when they're born, but, you know, they're taught religion from a young age when, you know, their minds are still malleable, and, you know, they live in this essentially narrow frame for all their lives, never having really understood why they joined the religion. You know, you could have been born anywhere, born into any religion, yet you're born as a Muslim, for example. And so, you know, people and the relation to their own religion, no one really finds so much introspection into specifically why they're in that religion. And that's essentially what that photo means to me.
Could you say the caption again of the photo?
We had swum in the ocean of religion for so long, yet we have never gotten wet.
Maybe I should have seen that caption.
Hey, that's on the Instagram. That's another thing I do is I post photos with literature in the caption.
Okay.
Essentially poems most of the time. Some Marxist literature.
You know, I know that your Instagram page is has a bigger presence than Twitter. I'll make sure that both get their fair share. But I just know it's funny. I guess I've married you to news,
Yeah.
which is not the right
For the
thing to
photo.
do.
That's
but
mostly what's been hitting on Twitter, basically. And
Yeah.
everything I've been posting there in terms of news has been doing well. So maybe that's why.
Well, I'm glad I found your Instagram page not that long ago. So this is, I appreciate the caption and the explanation. I know that you took a photo of the new lighthouse.
Mhm.
Now, I'll tell you something.
This photo is
here.
important to me because it represents the end of an era for basically the Hariri family.
Yeah. Okay, so that's there deliberately. I saw
Yeah.
that right away.
But the old couple, it's a nice addition, I think, because they do symbolize that generation, who did follow that political leader. And that's the end.
There's something about this photo that I like more than I usually would when I'm even standing there. Because I know this exact spot. I'm always there. I'm always looking at the Mediterranean. I'm looking at the sunset, which is just a little further out from here.
Yeah.
There's that restaurant here, Manara, whatever restaurant. Manara
The fish
Cafe.
place.
Fish place, yeah. But I know this location so well. I don't like it in real life, yet I like it more here. I think you found a way to make this lighthouse look older than it is. I am so partial. I am so attached to the old lighthouse. Yeah. So even though maybe the paint here is older now than the paint on the old one, the technique you used, whether it's the slight filtering, I don't know what you did.
Most of my photos undergo a lot of post-processing. I use Lightroom. I don't use it on the laptop. I just use it on my mobile.
That's the
Adobe Lightroom. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I don't use Photoshop much, basically, but Lightroom I do mess with the colors a lot. So you'd notice in real life it'll be much more orange than this. I mean, I've removed all the orange hues, all the yellow hues.
Okay.
And so it gives this faded image of the photo. Maybe that's making you feel as if it's older than it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't. Maybe that's how my brain works. When it's older, I appreciate it more. Even though this is not. I mean, this could have been taken yesterday. It's not that photo is still there of Rafiq Hariri. You mentioned
it's even been. And when light hits a photo for so long, it loses all its color, and you'll notice that it's almost completely white at the moment.
Oh, white meaning the photo of Rafiq Hariri. Yeah, that's a very old photo. Yeah. But before we get into, well, there's still a few more in Manara, but I'm going to pause it here for Rafiq Hariri. You mentioned the end of an era. Is this photo taken pre-October 17?
Yeah.
Is that something you feel at that moment, or is this description later?
You attribute the meaning to photos continuously, and essentially I don't want to force meaning on a photo. See, that's how I interpret it, but you might see it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's a post-October 17 re-examination.
La. And essentially, I don't take pictures with meaning in mind. When I take pictures, I think mostly of the aesthetics, the framing. So these people, for example, are, following the rule of thirds for photography, are on the third of the image over here, following that line. And so that's satisfying to the eye when images...
Go over that, the rule of thirds?
Yeah.
Can you just...
So you'll notice most of my photography follows the rule of thirds. If the subject...
Go back to your friend on the beach. Yeah.
No, but this one is completely in dead center.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Another one. Yeah, see, this is also rule of thirds. They're in the third of the image. And this is actually more prominent in...
Oh, the focus is on...
So there's two lines, one here and one there. And that's the center. And so you'll find that they're on the third of the image. And this is actually more prominent even in landscapes. If I could show you, not this one. Yeah, this one. So they're also on the thirds over here. It's more satisfying to the eye, essentially. If these people were dead center, I don't think the image would be as nice as it currently is.
Psychologically, why is it more pleasing to the eye?
I think because, we look for something to follow, first of all. We don't want to look immediately at the center, but how we read basically is from left to right or from right to left in some languages. Yeah. And so that follows kind of the same pattern. You're looking first here, and then your eye follows through the image to the right.
So it's a start and finish?
Yeah.
I never thought about this. My mind would always assume that the middle is the best
most of my photography does have subjects in the middle, but sometimes it's nice to off-center it.
but it is known as the rule of thirds.
Yeah, it is.
I would never know.
Every photographer.
Shows you that I'm not a photographer. Is this gentleman here in those rule of thirds?
La, but the bird is, and I think that the bird is a nice addition to this photo. Do you see it? Right there.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. This is actually a really old image. I took it, I think, maybe one of my first walks on Manara. I was down, and it is one of my earliest works. That's what I'm trying to say. and it was in my archives. I didn't really find anything nice about it until a few years later, just going through old images, re-editing, seeing what I can use. Essentially, during Corona, because I couldn't go out, you know? And so I had to go through my old files to be able to produce content.
But the AUB tower, you found a way to make it disappear. I mean, that...
The sun is behind it, it's completely blown out.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the bird follows the rule of thirds, and in your mind, without the bird, it wouldn't have that kind of pleasure. I mean, it's
the focus of the image is the guy.
Right, yeah.
And I feel like the bird is a really nice addition to the image, specifically because, back to the discussion where you never know what you're going to get in an image in terms of street photography, you know. It's as if this kind of art participates with the life of the city, or, you know, essentially here, nature. Right.
And that this is the one part of Beirut that doesn't change.
Yeah, exactly.
These rocks are millions of years old, right? The water has been approaching the coast here forever. And I imagine just people fishing here for time immemorial.
Yeah, I feel like this region especially, it doesn't show signs of being affected by the economic collapse or the revolution. It remains intact, I think, even in terms of there's no graffiti, there's no sign that the city has undergone massive political change. And going back even to the fact that it's comfortable, like we mentioned before, it's somewhere I feel comfortable walking as well, taking pictures.
Right. What I don't like is the corniche at night today.
Yeah, there's no lights coming in, and
it's just not. You just need.
It's not friendly as well.
Yeah. But that kind of photo for me is just the Beirut I know, and that is the part of Beirut that just is consistent. So now I'm going to ask you, before we get into downtown, why you don't have too many photos of Achrafieh.
It's a huge walking distance.
All right, so you do have some in Jamaisi and Mar Mkhayyab.
I've actually just started recently deciding to start walking more, or even because, you know, by the time, so I usually walk, right? And by the time I reach Achrafieh, I'm too tired to even continue taking photos. But these days I'm telling myself, khalas, take a cab to Achrafieh and start from there.
I walked all the way, Habibi. You have to walk to Achrafieh. Why? So it's really just too far for you.
And no, it's not too far. I love walking there all the time. But by the time I get there, I'm too tired to continue taking photos, you know?
That's interesting. You know, that's very you're very specific to where you walk in Beirut. Yeah. But good for you. You have your terrain. I will show the few photos of Jamaisi and Mar Mkhayyab you included, but they're less pre-October 17. They're more the impact of October 17 because this photo is of EDL and Kahraba Lebanon is obviously gutted here. So I'm going to guess this is post-explosion.
Yeah, it is. This is all the broken windows as well. This was actually, I think we had Christmas after that. And, you know, they put up decorations. In front of the police station, there was the Christmas tree.
Yes.
Picture of that as well. And it's just morbid, to be honest. How fast people ignored, you know? And I was going to mention something especially about...
Hey, Shirkat al-Kahraba, I think everyone now has this way of... It's just the best marker for the moment.
Yeah, it's a huge symbol of how ineffective, and especially because we're so pissed about the electricity situation, and there the electricity building lies, it's completely destroyed. No one's thinking about renovating it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and the blast knocked it down, but the electricity was already falling apart.
And it's funny because, you know, the current political elite are just, you know, they're focusing on things such as the LGBT community, while there are things right now to focus on in terms of our actual basic infrastructure of the city, you know?
Yeah. You're hinting at something that happened 10 days ago? The circular?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That's a very good way, I think, of explaining priorities.
Yeah.
You're younger than me. Obviously, you're 23. You're experiencing this kind of pushback right now. For you, as a photographer, let's say, as a storyteller, are you able to, in a way, tackle that kind of issue? Because that's a very politicized issue, and I don't know how that translates into art. Is there any space in photography for that?
I can tell you, actually.
Beyond just like taking photos of people in their element.
I can tell you through negation, basically. What don't you find in my photography? You don't find members of the LGBT community. You don't find members of... you don't even find... Like, the majority of my photography, the subjects are men. And so
Oh, I didn't.
You'll notice that this sexism is inherent in the street, basically, because the streets are a hostile place for these people. You know, women, especially these days, don't feel comfortable walking through Hamra Street at all, and that's, you know, that explains the lack of women in my photography as well.
Oh, so you're not deliberately avoiding? You just don't find many women
because it's just hostile. You know, you get catcalled, and you know, the members of the LGBT community. Sometimes you see them. Sometimes I see them walking on Mar Mikhail, but you see people assaulting them non-stop. Specifically, if their appearance is, you know, it emphasizes, you know, their gender or something.
But there is something you do, which is, I think, deliberate. Now that I know you a bit better, is even in Mar Mikhail Jemmezi, you're focusing on the working class.
Exactly.
So this is not a photo I would assume Jemmezi or Mar Mikhail.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing
this guy's pretty famous here. I don't know if you know him.
I mean, when you yes, but I don't think of that when I think of Jemmezi Mar Mikhail. So the emphasis on him is quite unique, I think.
Oh, you mean a member of the working class working in Jemmezi and Mar Mikhail?
You're not taking photos of girls walking because you emphasize that there aren't that many women in your photos. You're not in front of a bar where the youth is out, or you're not. It's not the nightlife of Mar Mikhail or Jemmezi. It's somebody who's making ends meet.
Yeah.
So even in here, you have that kind of emphasis on an older man who's.
It goes back to my aim of, you know, wanting to preserve these people.
Yeah.
Because I don't think in 50 years' time there's going to be space for businesses like these. Everything's going to be privatized. There's just going to be a coffee franchise here instead of a coffee vendor, you know?
Yeah.
And so.
Even the second photo, I think, is similar in that you found a
electronics shop. I think.
I mean,
there's so many things in the shop. You don't know what he does.
I looked at this photo for some time. I'm like, I don't know what he's selling, but yeah, he's selling everything.
I wonder how these people do business. You know, like.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably Ajar Edim that has extended itself into 2022. It looks like it's a repair store, but I think that's not really the focus of the story. It's him. It's him living in 2022 in this kind of difficult situation.
Here you'll notice the end of my Nikon era, basically. You'll notice this guy, if you zoom into the photo, he's quite a bit fuzzy. He's not really in focus because my Nikon started focusing on backgrounds more than... So even though I put the focus on him, the camera chose to focus behind him.
Why is that?
And so, I don't know, malfunction. Khalas, it's just...
they fail over time.
Yeah, they fail over time.
I didn't know that.
I had about, I think, 30,000 or 40,000 shutter clicks on that camera. And so that's essentially when I moved to Fujifilm after this photo.
Interesting. I didn't know that. He knows that you're there.
Yeah.
Is there anything that happens afterwards in this photo?
Well, for this photo in specific,
Now I'm actually looking to see if you're in focus. Yes, you are. I am. Canon, thank you. Canon, yes.
Not usually. Usually I walk away immediately. But with street photography, I wish I had time to talk to the subjects, get to know their names, get to know their stories. But you know, with street photography, it's more of a in the moment thing. I don't want to, first of all, alert the person that the image is happening, because I don't want poses, you know, like this, or because, you know, then it stops being street.
But did you have to explain yourself?
Usually what I do is I just hold up my camera, point at it, and I'm like, you want? And he's like, I'm fine with it. And then I just take the photo.
So he knew.
Yeah.
And he was fine with it. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's good. Because from that moment, it looks to me that it could go either way. He could say, what are you taking a photo of?
At that point, I come up to him, I ask him, I'm working on like a street photography collective of images. I'm basically trying to preserve shops like you.
Right.
And if they don't like that, you know, khalas, I just won't post the image.
Have you ever deleted a photo?
Yeah.
Okay, and you've...
Recently, I took a photo. It was quite funny. It's the only photo I have ever deleted. And it's the only photo someone's ever asked me to delete after maybe hundreds of posts. Mm-hmm. Essentially, it was a picture of a motorcycle with a sticker on it, Heil Hitler. And then there was someone in the background on a motorcycle zooming by. That person recognized themselves on the motorcycle zooming by and asked for the picture to be deleted.
So after it was posted, they noticed themselves in the photo.
Yeah.
And
they weren't even the main subject of the image.
So you'd already shared it.
Yeah.
And how does this happen? They just reach out to you and they say, it's me, I don't want to be in this photo?
Yeah, exactly. And I tell them, I'm sorry that, you know, this happened. I'm going to delete it now. Yeah.
I didn't expect that to happen. So people do catch themselves in your photography,
Yeah.
which means you're becoming increasingly well known.
Yeah.
And
I took a picture of a fisherman, for example,
Yeah.
and then his daughter reached out to me on Instagram. Yeah.
And she said, "Keep it, not delete
Yeah,
it." Yeah, yeah.
She was quite
okay.
happy about it, yeah.
Wow. Well, this is a great segue.
And actually, before we move on,
Yeah, please.
when we're talking about, someone being happy about them being in the photo, there's also this thing about you're helping people. People are happy about their legacy being preserved, I think, and that's an important issue, I think, to mention.
But I can imagine that it goes both ways, because I know from my own life that not everyone is okay with their photo being taken.
Yeah.
And I do know that many photographers don't want to delete their photos. So you end up with this sort of friction. But it's, from what you're saying, it sounds like your consideration is more with the individual, less to do with you. That you're taking their concerns first. I don't hear that much from photographers. So I appreciate that you have, in a way, like, it is a sensitivity to people that don't want to be in these photos. It's safe to say, and you tell me if I'm getting anything wrong here, that your hobby, I'm being delicate here, it feels like it's a full-time hobby. Aside from AUB, you're on the streets taking photos all the time.
It is a hobby. I don't work for any agency,
Right, but hobby in a way I don't think it does it enough justice, because you're...
it's weird. It's not a hobby. It's more like a life passion that wasn't realized, and I'm trying to realize it.
Before you were able to... Before you're selling photos, when you're still an AUB student, and you happen to arrive to Lebanon as it's beginning to really collapse, and you're here on October 17, 2019. You already know how to take photos. You've done enough. You've tested the waters enough to figure it out. And if this is, you tell me if I'm getting anything wrong. From the limited knowledge I know, is that a photo like this one was taken October 17, 2019.
3 a.m.
3 a.m. So you're on the streets, late October 17, 2019, and your camera's with you. As much as you can, take me back to the moment you see a hobby turning into something much more.
Yeah.
And what it felt like at that moment, because you're part of the protest, but you're also documenting the protest too. In a way, you're doing both.
Yeah.
So as much as you can say.
So just to give you a rundown of that night, basically, it was a normal university semester. We have exams coming up, and this starts to happen. And the reason I was there at 3 a.m. Basically is because I was late to come to the fire thing.
Well, it started at night. It started late, if I remember right.
I think 8 p.m., 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And, from 8 p.m. till 12, I was just pacing around the room. Do I go? My parents calling nonstop, don't go to the protests, And, this was the first instance of, moving from a country so secure as the Emirates.
Or let me use your words again, mundane and bland. And monarchic.
Monarchic and controlled as the Emirates.
To chaotic, anarchic,
خلاص, now both of us won't get jobs there. Congrats.
I'll edit my part.
And then, to the security issues of going down there. But, it felt, like you said, the bite of a bug, basically. I felt as though there was a responsibility not just to capture what was going on, but to, become a news outlet myself, because...
you saw yourself as a photojournalist.
Yeah, exactly. Because, to me, photojournalism is its own form of activism. Because, each photojournalism agency has its own agenda, right? And, my agenda is, on the side of the people that were protesting, while you could say, let's say, MTV, would be American-backed, or...
you were trying to just get the people's...
Yeah.
You were going straight to the protest.
Yeah.
Unfiltered.
Trying to show a narrative which was, let's say, being suppressed. Because, that quote, they won't televise the revolution, basically. Okay,
I see.
And so, there was this responsibility I felt, throughout the night. Do I go? Do I not go? And so, at 2 a.m. I decided just khalas, I'm gonna go at 2 a.m. complete nighttime and to go cover the protests. And essentially, this is next to the building that the office building that they were burning.
I mean, this is Riyadh Sulah, right? Or,
Yeah, this is where would
actually,
I place
it's
this
hard
photo?
to kind of tell because there's no real.
Yeah,
I mean,
you don't remember the building that was burning on the first night? It had one person inside it. It's an office building essentially.
If my memory is right, it's next to Riyadh Sulah, but I don't
Yeah,
remember exactly. It's on the road that goes to Martyrs Square.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Mm.
So it's but that's 2 a.m. You're there,
Yeah.
and you have that person in mind, and you're going to share their story so that no one else can capture it, filter it.
And there was so much rage on the first night as compared to the other nights.
Yeah.
You see the rage of the first week completely turn into something else the next few weeks. It went from actual, I'd say actual revolt, to it became a trend to go down to the revolution. And I think that's a huge problem that we faced down there.
I mean, you really, these are the first hours.
Yeah, this is the same scene.
Yes.
That's the building I was talking about.
Okay, so that's in Martyrs Square.
Mm.
Oh, I see. I know which building you're talking about. In the middle of the road, in the middle of the Martyrs Square.
Yeah.
On the way up.
The thing is, there's nothing next to it for us to refer to.
The egg is next to it.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly where it is.
Yeah. But there's something about this photo here that I enjoyed. So, it's a chaotic moment. A lot of these kinds of photos have been taken, where people are doing things, they're playing sometimes, they're keeping themselves preoccupied while there's a fire raging behind.
Mm.
So this boy is reading. There's another photo that you have, which I think is just, it's maybe the following day or following days.
No, this is much afterwards.
Oh, it's much later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But again, it's reading.
Yeah.
Can I ask you why you have that kind of photo as a preference, maybe? Because you sent me a collection of downtown. I didn't see any photos of crowds. You're focusing in on individuals. These are boys reading during times of chaos.
Yeah, pictures of crowds, you can't really ascribe meaning to them. It's just the crowd. There's nothing really to focus on in terms of photography.
Yeah.
That's from a photography point of view. But in terms of the actual meaning I'd ascribe to the photo, I call this photo theory versus practice. So there are some people, who read leftist theory, who want to read about revolt. But, when it comes down to, actual revolt, what are you going to do? Who's going to dismantle the structures of power?
Oh, so you see them reading politics.
Yeah, they're reading rather than, participating in the actual revolt.
Uh-huh.
And so I see that as really contradictory.
Do you introduce yourself to these?
No.
No. Okay.
What I loved about the revolution is that every single form of societal norm broke down. I could point the camera at anything. It was all normal to be able to take pictures of anyone during the revolution. And so that's why it was kind of easy to be able to generate work during that time as well.
There's several other photos, and there are ones that you were kind enough to share. I like this photo too.
This one is with the Fuji, for example. You'll notice the colors are different.
Oh, so you've already transitioned here to Fuji.
This one, yeah.
Okay, okay.
And this one's quite ironic, I think. You have the I Heart Beirut sign, and then people are running away from. I think it's kind of it's kind of telling of the Lebanese condition.
Are you wearing a gas mask?
La.
No. Okay.
It is, there's a lot of tears involved in my work.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to ask you several questions about this photo. I spent my time with this photo. What does this feel like to you when you're there? Because you hinted at it already. That's a message of positivity behind, with a city that's not in its best shape. So what does it feel like to you to see that happen? And is it in any way a blend of positive and negative?
What you're trying to do with this type of photography, I'm not really into photojournalism purely. I'm bringing my the principles of street into actually photojournalism. So you'll notice in this photo and in other photos, there's like an aspect of humor. There's something to look at and laugh at.
Okay.
And so this mixture of photojournalism and street, you could say, creates that. And so this also goes back to my idol when it comes to photography. It would be Steve McCurry. He doesn't really do pure photojournalism, but rather, he describes himself not even as a photojournalist. He describes himself as a visual storyteller. And I think that's, important. I think I'm not trying to cover every single thing that happened. I'm trying to be able to tell a story with each image that I take. And so, coverage is not really the purpose.
But you did say earlier that your career, or let's say your passion, does encompass some photojournalism.
Yeah.
And you're filling that space.
Mm.
So you mentioned MTV, but it's not just MTV. It's any sort of outlet. But this kind of photo, what does it mean to you when you see this happening? I'm curious about your relationship to Beirut when you have this photo taken. Because I will share what it feels like to me, but I'd like to hear from you. Because we're 2 decades apart in age. I see things here that maybe have to do with having seen this part of Beirut change dramatically and where it is now. But I'm curious how you see it. Is it just literally tear gas and protesters and sign?
Actually, that's the meaning. The meaning I have for the photo is, to me, is that Beirut is in a constant condition of the denial of reality. No matter what happens to, let's say, the financial district or Beirut souks, they're going to rebuild and pretend like it's business as usual. And so there's this constant the condition that Lebanese people are in, that we live in currently the best country in the world, right? And I heart Beirut and everything, but you have to eventually open your eyes to the reality that we're currently living in Beirut. And I think even that relates to your generation, how there was also a denial of reality back in your time as well.
Yeah. So you see denial of reality.
Mm-hmm.
I see a bit of that. I think that's permanent, actually. So I that to me is part of it. It's in its fabric.
That's what makes this image ironic, basically.
Yeah. But I see something which is maybe not. It's maybe it's more subjective. What I see also is a downtown that I remember war-torn. So post-war downtown, pre-Solidaire. So even the souks are relatively new. This ugly shopping mall.
They're all just facades, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what, the last maybe 10, 12 years? I don't remember when the souks reopened. It's not that long ago that they reopened.
And you'd have to think, even essentially before Solidaire, how many street vendors and shops were in place before Beirut Souks was erected by Hariri, and how many homes were destroyed just to erect Beirut Souks?
And this is it's like more urban planning, because I've had this conversation with Muna al-Halla, Muna Fawaz, and I forgot, Muhammad al-Sham'a yumkin. He was much younger, from Beirut Urban Lab. Now he's at Lorient. I don't remember if we talked about Solidaire in specific. Maybe we didn't. But I've had urban planning episodes. Maybe it's too wide of a topic, but what I see is the post-war attempt, which is complicated, let's say, turning into something that is perhaps not just protest. It's also, it could be anarchic, let's say, to a point that it could lead to something worse. And my mind always goes back to those years, the early 1990s, late 80s, early 90s, when downtown was at its worst. I don't know if I'm expressing it the right way. There's a sense of fear in this photo, not just euphoria, also fear.
You think it possibly get worse than this?
It's more that I see downtown. The description you provided of the pre-war downtown, maybe the 1960s, let's say, before downtown was really deteriorating, is something I'll never experience. I have no idea. I wish I could time travel, because I'd love to know what downtown felt like 60 years ago. It's the downtown that I know post-war that just didn't get there for many reasons. Yeah. Turns into something that's not necessarily great. I mean, I'm not a fan of shopping malls in cities, period. But there's a sense of fear, maybe, that it's downtown is a ghost town again. And that, in my mind, goes back to war. Even without the war, but it's the green line.
To me, downtown is a ghost town essentially for just one class of people, the working class. Downtown was essentially made, and what I do sometimes is I count how many cars are above $700,000 on the street. Yeah. When I'm back from my walk, it's about like 30 cars. Essentially, this whole area was made for the enjoyment of the rich, and we've all been priced out of it. And that goes back to the issue of we've been priced out of our connection to the sea. We've been priced out of the connection to essentially what is the heart of Beirut.
So there's an economics in your photography, let's say, that's coming out.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the focus of the photo.
No.
Okay. Nabeel, take me to the early days and maybe weeks of October 17 with photos like this one here. Are you doing this? What do they call it? Fisherman?
No, this
that's what is it called again? Fisherman's eye?
Fisherman's technique. Yeah.
Fisherman's technique. So this is not that kind of moment.
La, not at all. You know, there's this water cannon blasting water towards there.
There's actually a second photo here, which I think it's the same occasion.
Yeah. And so what's protecting me is a huge concrete wall. If I pass it, I'm gonna get drenched in water. And this was one of the nights where, and I think was the closest of the revolutionaries actually being able to break into, you know, the surrounding area over here.
Right.
And they almost made it in. They actually managed to break down the barriers up until just the water cannon was in their way. And
so you're strategically hiding in a way.
Yeah.
Are you trying to get your photos out beyond your own channels? I mean, at these moments, were you trying to get them circulated?
I was. Yeah.
You were.
I wish I was on Twitter back in the day and during the revolution, because on Twitter, you're able to become your own news agency on Twitter. It's true. You know,
you even get jobs after.
Exactly, and some posts reach, let's say, above 100,000 people. On Instagram, you know, there's what's it called, censorship essentially over these things.
Mark Zuckerberg.
That's why there's censorship.
Yes, right.
And yeah, on Instagram you'd only reach 1,000 people, and that goes back to the issue of trying to be my own news agency and try to, because I don't remember this night. I don't think this night was televised, honestly.
This was probably 2-3-4 days later.
This was a few weeks later.
Oh, it's a few weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But are you trying to reach out to news outlets? No, there was never an attempt to get your photos acquired. Okay. Were any news outlets reaching out to you?
Sometimes with L'Orient Le Jour.
Oh, local outlets. Okay, but none of the bigger...
No.
Okay.
Those news outlets source images directly from Reuters, AP,
right.
Those agencies.
But I'm curious, would you have even entertained it? Because I felt that there was a built-in pressure to not go down that road. But let's say those outlets were trying to get your photography. Would you have been accepting of that, or was it more that...
I think I would, with the consideration that I want to at least be able to see what narrative they're going to use the photos in.
That's interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do have that, right as the copyright owner of the image,
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's only one more photo that I'd like to go with you, and I think it's...
Oh, this one. You haven't gone through this one.
There we go, yeah. So that's many months later. That's not... and that 2020 actually. Yeah,
and that actually runs with the meaning of the photo. Essentially, you see this guy disappointed looking on to
That's true.
I felt, as I went down every single day, and I was seeing, the momentum of the revolution slow down every single day. And, eventually I felt as though the revolutionaries were feeling kind of betrayed by the general population. Every night it'd be 2 a.m., 3 a.m. They'd be like, why are we here? We're only staying here to get beat up and go back home. And, the internal security forces don't tend to beat them up until there's not that many people there. And that's around 2-3 a.m.
Yeah.
For most people, it was just, let's go, and until it gets a little too late, let's go back home. And that's not how revolutions work, Like, there's no the late period, You have to break into the parliamentary area. You have to, you actually form a movement, form a collective of people.
But you're trying to wait and see what happens at that time? Is that are you here late at night to watch the internal security? Yeah.
I stayed every single night until everyone left.
Right.
Yeah. And so you'd see in this image, a sense of extreme disappointment by this guy. Things weren't looking bright by the end of the revolution. The numbers were low, and yeah.
Are you seeing yourself in this guy?
No, definitely. I played, like you said, 2 parts as both revolutionary and from a coverage point as photojournalist. Sometimes I'd get so mad where I'd just pick up a rock and throw as well, and take pictures as well and throw. And it was a mixture. And there was also this sense of disappointment with me.
You see the end of the protest movement, and then you live through the pandemic. You survive the blast, like many of us that,
Where were you during the blast?
I was in New York.
Oh, okay.
But this apartment was destroyed. Actually, this room has been put back together largely, but when you walk out, you'll see the fridge has glass from the windows absorbed. Yeah,
Oh.
I'm patching it up slowly, but this apartment was destroyed.
I don't have much photo coverage of the blast. I know I was in Beirut souks at the time, but the aftershock,
Yeah.
first of all, we didn't know what it was. And so what I did first of all was just run to AUB.
Right.
Yeah, and so I had my camera with me, but I just didn't think of lifting it. I just immediately wanted to get to safety.
So that's a moment you chose to not do your...
Yeah, I just couldn't take a photo in that moment.
Yeah. I was very lucky to not be here, but I mean, that's selfish to say, but I was doing episodes on a daily basis just to raise money. But I didn't feel... I know what you're talking about, that's the time maybe to capture, but it's too horrendous. You don't want to.
As a photojournalist, I had to picture just the shock afterwards, to be able to get people outside to sympathize, get people to start funding the rebuilding programs, the investigation programs as well.
It's in the background of your photos that you post sometimes, but it's not the subject. I have never seen you actually do a blast-oriented collection.
Yeah.
And is that deliberate, that you don't...
I don't have much work from that period. I only have work...
Even the impact of the blast. I mean, the destruction, let's say. I have never seen you go too deep into that. Is that by design, that you're not...
It's a touchy subject for me. I noticed the months following the blast, I was quite sensitive to loud sounds, revisiting the memories of it. I tended to avoid it, basically. And that's maybe why it hasn't appeared in more work.
I appreciate that. No, because it's a delicate subject, and I respect the
I can send you a few photos I do have. Maybe we can display them now. They're not that much.
I mean, I just by my interaction with you on social media, I've never seen you go down that road. And I guess from what you're saying, it's that it just hurts too much. I'll wrap it up with a huge question. You graduated this year?
Yeah.
All right, so Mabrouk.
Like
what, a month
3
ago?
weeks ago, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So you're there with Fadlu Khouri making his speech. You're in the green, what is it called? The green...
what's it called? The football field, I think, yeah.
God, what's it called? The Green Oval's upper campus, the thing down.
Let's call it the stadium.
Between the business school and the gym.
Yeah.
that thing down. I forgot the name. You wrap up a bachelor's degree that you set out with 2017.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to take a wild guess. You finished the degree because you had to, but I'm going to this is a hunch. That is where you're moving in life. And I know that 2 weeks ago, you were selling photos in Hamra. You're not selling lab equipment, or you're not even doing anything related to chemical engineering. You're in Hamra at the street fair selling your work. So this speculation. This is where you're moving in life. First, am I right? And second, if I'm wrong, what the hell are you going to do in chemical engineering now? Because I'd like to know that too.
I'm in a similar situation to the guy that you had a podcast with recently, where he uses his profession to fund his hobby. First of all, the astrophotography.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Cybersecurity and astrophotographer.
And it's a similar case as well, because especially with street photography, wherever I do find work as a chemical engineer, I'm able to whatever free time I have, I can do the street photography with. And yes, I'd love for this hobby to turn into a full-time profession. But I have to accept the reality that if I go into photography now as a photographer strictly, I'd be forced into things which I don't really want to go through in terms of my art direction. I don't want to do weddings, for example. I don't want to do baby photography.
Oh, you mean just to make some money?
Yeah, I don't want to do the commercial stuff to be able to eventually make it. I'd rather set up a nice nest, let's say, with chemical engineering money, and then move slowly into the real passion.
So financial security will come from your degree, but this is still with you.
Yeah.
So you're not letting this go.
Of course not. No, because like I said, it moves with you everywhere. Right. Street photography you can do in any city. It doesn't just have to be Beirut. Even though I do realize that once I move, there is a fear that no city will compare to Beirut. Especially in
the chemical engineering job. Do you see yourself leaving Lebanon?
Of course. Even with our own petroleum off the coast and gas, first of all, some of the wells don't have any. And then they just
That's
sold it off
many
to
years.
Israel, the one that did have. Recently they did that.
But even that's a decade away before, yeah.
I mean,
right.
and in terms of Kamen salaries, there's the problem that the fact that they haven't dollarized salaries in Lebanon.
Yeah.
And you know, that's a huge problem as well.
So what do you do if you offered a job back in Dubai?
Oh, I'm not applying to the Middle East.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
And right now, actually, the only thing AUB students are going for is consulting, especially engineers. And, you know, the work hours of consulting from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m.
Yeah.
There's no work-life balance in consulting. And so that's why I'm kind of avoiding that career path.
You get a job in Berlin. You go to London. You go to Frankfurt.
Berlin is perfect. Frankfurt is perfect.
Okay, let's say you go to Berlin, which is a lovely city to explore photography as well. But it's not necessarily your home.
Yeah.
Do you pursue photography there? Are you able to keep it going? Okay, so you're not married to Lebanon.
The thing is, because of my past, you know, I was raised in the Emirates, and I've never really been able to, even in these few years, I have made a connection with the country and, you know, the city, but it's not that connection you gain, especially when you're raised here and you go to high school here, you make your friends here. All my friends are international students, Egyptian, Indian, and those friends from high school. And so, you know, I never really developed that sense of, I have to go back home. I have this sense of belonging to the country. No, I'd rather be able to go wherever living is most comfortable, be able to follow my passion. In terms of specifically street photography, you know, you can do it wherever you'd like.
What I want you to do before you pack up and leave this country, because I know at some point you will return with
true.
Maybe the same camera. What I want you to do is take this camera and go beyond your comfort zone.
First of all, I really enjoy photography in the regions that you mentioned, especially like you mentioned, I haven't been doing much work in this region specifically, Mar Mikhail and forwards. But recently I've been exploring Burj Hamoud as well. And something I'd like to mention about Achrafieh is that I've been noticing you said get out of your comfort zone, but it's so comfortable to do photography in Achrafieh. And like the buildings are still, you know, they're not that much worn down, and I can do some of that kind of modern street photography that you find in other cities outside. And I feel like my style changes when I'm in Achrafieh.
But even Badaro, I'd like to see how you take Badaro, or these neighborhoods that are off the beaten path, like Hay Siryan, Had Al-Adliya, next to the museum, but on the eastern side. These are neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods that people don't tend to walk through. Karim al-Zaytoun gets its fair share, but not enough. I would love to see... it's subjective, it's personal.
You're right, there has been a super focus on the regions that I cover in terms of media coverage, and there needs to be some art produced out of these neighborhoods, I think, as well. The architecture there alone is just so nice.
Exactly. And I mean, sometimes it's not easy to go to certain neighborhoods, but even Bashura, Khand al-Ghami, there's some lovely buildings there.
When I walk through, what's it called, Burj Hamoud, I keep walking through under the bridge, and then Hezbollah memorabilia start to pop up. And
بيكون نبع, I think, right?
And then I just started to slowly turn back, because one of my friends, they got stopped with their camera.
Right. Yeah, I don't want you to get stopped. So whenever you feel unsafe, walk away. But a lot of the city needs to be discovered through this camera. Before you leave, and you're very nice to me. You mentioned before we started recording, you didn't have to, but you got me something. I got him prints. You got me $1 million in cash.
They're not, I don't know, I chose them pretty randomly.
Fresh dollars. No?
Here you go.
Habibi, this is very kind. You know, I want to share.
And Kamal, I didn't get to thank you for having me on the episode. It's a pleasure, first of all, and I kind of have this kind of imposter syndrome of being here. How dare I sit where Shabr Nahas sat?
He didn't sit here.
I know, in the other house, but still, it's a pleasure to be on the show. Oops.
What makes you less worthy than Shabr Nahas?
I don't know.
You are who? What?
I don't know.
By the way, it's very nice of you, because I missed your
the print sale.
Yeah. So, this is fantastic.
So first print, it's I don't know if we're gonna show it on screen or on camera.
I will. I will.
All cops are bastards.
This is during the protest.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is actually when they were calling for the guy who was giving immunity to the August 4th blast people responsible. What was his name? Muhammad? Something? Fahmi?
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
The name is Hassan Diab government?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot his name.
Yeah, but he was granting immunity to basically
right.
port supervisors and all that.
This is great.
And the second one, because you live in Mar Mikhail. This guy is in Mar Mikhail.
Oh, I know him. Oh, this is a lovely
And he has
photo.
the mask on his forehead.
This is great.
Yeah. There's a lot of white space in the room, you know. Maybe I'll bring you more.
Bring as much as you
Episode
can.
part 2, maybe.
Bring a hammer and a thing, the drill. 'Cause these walls are thick.
I don't know what your landlord will think about that.
He's a fan of the podcast.
Okay, perfect.
This is lovely. This one's definitely
Up. Yeah.
This will be up very soon. Habibi, that's very kind. You've joined now the table of gifts.
Perfect. All these are all gifts?
Well,
that's so sweet.
yeah, I mean, people that have joined the podcast, or I've kind of, I've tried to get some of their work on the table. I will find space for these lovely photos. You're very kind.
Thank you.
I want to say it again. You're, for me, a reminder of why I started doing this podcast. You are more for me than Shab al-Nahas. Believe me, don't compare yourself that way. He's a profound figure in politics. I think you will be a profound figure in photography. That's my bet. I'm glad that 4 years ago when I started recording these episodes, I would eventually find my way back to storytelling and
I like what you've been doing. Yeah, you've been shifting basically gear. You did the nighttime photography with the asset photographer. Now you're doing daytime photography with me.
Yeah, and next week it's a architect and a designer, Muhammad Tame, who does these nostalgia photos, and he matches them to where we are now. It's almost like time travel in Beirut. This is more this is my passion, to be honest. So, thank you for spending Friday evening with me.
It was a nice evening.
It's a fantastic evening.
Thank you for doing the episode while you were drugged up on your booster.
Thank you for looking at me like I'm a tomato, but we made it. We pulled through. Thank you, Nabeel.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
We did it. Thumbs up. Thanks for listening and watching, and a friendly reminder to support this podcast by contributing through Patreon or PayPal. All links are in the details box. Until next time, I'm Rani Shatah, and this is the Beirut Banyan.